New Orleans Office of Inspector General releases the results of its investigation into alleged bid rigging as part of the city's now abandoned Smart Cities project.
The IG's investigation took more than a year, and it found 2 city employees may have violated state ethics laws in awarding a contract for the project. David Jones joins us now with more.
In April of 2021, the city put out a request for proposals for an ambitious project providing free wireless internet access citywide and partnering with a private firm to fully integrate street lights, sensors, networks, and data analytics platforms. It was called Smart City Systems, and it's something that's been done in various cities worldwide. But here in New Orleans, the process for awarding the contract quickly came under heavy scrutiny.
And the purpose of ethics laws are to prevent impropriety as well as the appearance of impropriety.
A new report from the city's Office of Inspector General lays out potential violations of state ethics code and city code in the awarding of a contract to further, in Mayor LaToya Cantrell's words, digital equity, providing internet in the city for people who can't afford it.
While the winning vendor, Smart Plus Connected NOLA, made up of companies Qualcomm, JLC, Ike Smart City, and others, has now pulled out of the deal, our investigation will proceed to ensure that all city employees conducted themselves appropriately.
In April of last year, City Council launched an investigation into the awarding process for the Smart Cities contract. Days later, the consortium that won, Smart Connected NOLA, told the city it would be backing out.
The citizens of New Orleans have lost faith in government. For too long, there's been a complete lack of accountability, transparency, and support for the citizens of our city.
What had council members fired up was the appearance of a multitude of conflicts of interest in the deal. 2 city officials in charge of the project, Director of the Mayor's Office of Utilities, Jonathan Rhodes, and Christopher Wolf, a city IT staffer, were simultaneously running a side business called Verge Internet. Verge provided consulting services to Qualcomm, the major player in the winning Smart Connected NOLA consortium, on a project in LA. Both Rhodes and Wolf were members of the selection committee, which ultimately scored Smart Connected NOLA highest, although neither disclosed their ownership of Verge in 2021 when the contract was awarded.
The second place bidder pointed out that members of that panel have a business relationship with Qualcomm.
Rafael Goyeneche is president of the Metropolitan Crime Commission.
The city was either going to do business with Qualcomm or nobody. Why didn't the city award that contract to the second place rated bidder or start the process over again? Because part of that was to provide Wi-Fi services to people of the city of New Orleans that couldn't otherwise afford it.
An attorney for Wolf says his client was cleared by the Louisiana Board of Ethics and that Verge never had any financial interest in any contract with the city of New Orleans. Another name in all of this, Ignite Cities. Cox, the second place bidder, alleged in its protest letter Ignite was providing consulting work for Qualcomm and Smart Connected NOLA, while also providing assistance to the city. The OIG said Ignite was allowed to view and help draft the original solicitation. The Inspector General issued several recommendations, including requiring companies and individuals who volunteer solicitation review services to the city complete the same state ethics training as public employees.
Even though they point out potential violations of criminal laws, if the Inspector General believed that there was proof of a crime, they could have obtained an arrest warrant, and they didn't do that. This matter is being referred to the district attorney's office.
Mayor Cantrell addressed the IG's report today, saying the city council investigation yielded no results and the administration will be analyzing these findings. In a statement, Councilmember Helena Moreno said the scope of the project was unclear from the start and that city employees charged with bringing it online were, quote, molding and steering the contract to benefit their connections.